All right. Welcome. Here we are at Old and New Money's podcast, getting ready for UNF 14, the last show for the UpNext Fighting Promotion of the year. They've had a phenomenal year, and with me is one of the owners and really, I would say, one of the creative forces behind UNF, Mr. Steve Bash. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? I don't think you guys are doing so good, because if you got me as a guest first, you must be like running low. Where's Abel?
Abel had a little sniffle, you see, and he had to bail out. So
Okay. Do I have to bring like Abel's energy to this?
no, I think that would just yours will be fine.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. The first time I met Steve, well, actually over the phone, I talked to Chris Buckner, and then we got on the phone with Cristobal, our producer, and I called him Steve Nash accidentally. Yes. And
one letter and a lot of talent separates Steve Nash and Steve Bash.
Yeah, but you seem more well-connected. I think you're putting on a big show here, and so I hope you didn't take offense. Looks like we're still friends. He didn't mind that I messed up his name. I didn't.
I've always liked Steve Nash's game. I think I'm the better-looking Nash, but yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get you guys to square off sometime, and I think you'll settle it.
You'll probably beat the shit out of me, but yeah.
Yeah.
So can we curse on the podcast or no?
Yeah. Okay. It's going on up on YouTube. I think YouTube allows swearing, and nothing is off limits here, Steve.
That's fucking awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could talk about anything you like.
All right.
Or is there anything off limits I should know about right now?
No. My wife will tell you there's a couple things off limits, but I've been dealing with that for 18 years.
Yeah. That's why we have safe words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. You want to tell us what your safe word is?
If I tell you publicly what my safe word is, I'll never get any action.
My safe word is no.
Forcefully or just subtly?
I say it real sexy, actually.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right. How R-rated are this? Because I was going to say, is this like a pegging situation? Or all right. So
next. Yeah.
All right. No, sorry. I am not representing UpNext very well right now. Oh, we've got sound effects. There we go.
All right, so Steve, tell us, let's get into it, right? I want to know a little bit more about you, because you're a really interesting guy. Steve's a lawyer. Steve is incredibly well-connected in the Hollywood scene. It seems like he knows just about everybody in any industry. He's been a boxing promoter for a really long time. Let's go to the backstory here. I want to know a little bit about young Steve Bash, you know?
Young Steve Bash?
Yeah.
Was a long time ago. I grew up in LA, so I went to, I can't, if I tell you what high school I went to, you're going to start making generalizations, but Beverly Hills High,
90210. Okay.
Yeah, 90210. So I have a bunch of 90210 friends from back in the day. Went to UCLA, so stayed in LA for just about most of my life. Went to law school in Chicago and became an attorney. And the boxing story kind of started there, where I had a boxer come to me, and I wasn't, I was always a sports fan, but I had a boxer come to me who spoke Russian. I speak fluent Russian. That's one of my secret superpowers.
See, we're getting all the secrets of Bash coming out. He speaks Russian.
Technically born in the Ukraine.
Okay.
Yeah, came over here when I was 3 years old. So, but I kind of kept the language. So this boxer came to me and literally said, I have a contract with Don King, and he was supposed to pay me a certain amount of money for my fight. And he stiffed me and paid me less. And he couldn't do anything but had a fight and sign the contract. And I was a really young attorney thinking, sue Don King? That sounds awesome. So I didn't sue him. I just wrote him a letter, and I got him his money back. And
that's all it took. They didn't try to fight it?
They were. I guess they were afraid. I don't know. I write really good letters.
Right, Another skill. Right.
Yeah.
My writing Don skills. King. His hair used to be slicked back, and then he was frightened, right?
Yes, I've always said my writing skills are better than my speaking skills.
Damn, Steve.
The UNF guys love when I write really long emails. So long story short, he came in basically to pick up his check, and he said, "Okay, I want you to be my manager, and we've got to fly to Florida to negotiate my next fight." He was already top 10 in the world. His name is Roman Carmez. He had the coolest nickname I've heard in boxing to date, Made in Hell, which I thought was great because
how do you get a nickname like that?
It was kind of like
kill a man in the ring or something.
It was a play on Made in America, where things are certain quality and stuff like that. But he kind of grew up, in a really tough life, so he was kind of like made in hell instead of made in somewhere nice. And
very cool.
And so I was very lucky. I always say that I'm probably the luckiest guy in the boxing business because I negotiated his first fight, which at the time was called a title eliminator. I mean, they still have them, where basically 2 fighters in the top 10 get chosen to fight for the #1 mandatory for the champion. At the time, he was fighting a guy named Keith Holmes, who was a world champion at middleweight. Lost his title to Bernard Hopkins back in the day. And, those 2 guys were going to, be the next challenger for the IBF world title. The champion at the time was a guy named Kasim Uma, who's like the next big thing. He's like a Ugandan foot soldier that defected to the United States. Oscar De La Hoya just started Golden Boy Promotions. They had signed him.
This is like early 90s,
This
right?
is 2004-05.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Yeah, so about 20 years ago. And so he won that fight. He didn't know anybody really, so like he just knew someone at Wildcard Boxing Club, Freddie Roach's gym. There was an older Russian trainer there because he was supposed to fight Oscar De La Hoya at one point, and De La Hoya pulled out of the fight. So he just literally packed up his bags from Russia, left his wife and kids, but just kind of told them, okay, I got to go win a world title. So he kind of moved to LA. And he won that eliminator fight. I was a 3rd guy in his corner, so I was the guy in charge of putting ice on his neck in between rounds and stuff like that.
Had you done that before?
I had never done anything close to that. I think the closest I had done is just watch a live boxing match. I remember I watched Klitschko when he came to LA.
And then you end up in the corner at like the highest level.
Yeah, he didn't know anybody out here, so it was literally this older Russian trainer who since unfortunately has passed away. And there was a local dentist who was the cut man, and I was a 3rd guy. And I remember there was one round where, because I was shitting bricks, like I was so nervous. Just because you also when you watch boxing on TV or you even watch it in an arena, it's a lot different when you're right in the corner. And so,
yes, 100%.
There was one round where I forgot to put the ice on his neck, and he got up off the stool and he chirps back in Russian. He's like, "Where's the fucking ice?" And I'm just a kid. I was like 27 or something, and so I looked up at him. I'm like, "Sorry," and I go, "Next round," and then I'm talking to myself like, "What if there's no next round?" Because it was pretty wild, and he won a really razor close decision. He won 7 rounds to 5, and I'm telling you, like when I went into the ring. After that 12th round, like I felt like I had fought 12 rounds, like the adrenaline and everything else. Like I was just
real,
like,
yeah,
for sure. So the cool thing is he won that, he becomes a mandatory for the world title, and like 4, 5, 6 months later, and I'm negotiating his world title fight. And that world title fight is in Vegas, and that was about 18 and a half years ago. I know because that weekend I proposed to my then girlfriend, who's now my current wife, because everyone was out there. Like my family came out, my best friend came out from Chicago. Everyone's there. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, she thinks I'm busy, so I'm gonna try to, plan something extra. And the crazy thing is, he was a 5-1 underdog, and he won the world title. I think it's legal, or probably it's. The statute of limitations is probably run, but I made more money betting on him than I did actually as his manager. Because
I think you can bet on him.
I could, yeah. So I bet on my own fighter.
As long as you're not betting against him.
Yeah, I bet on my own fighter. And I didn't bet against him. And actually, the reason why I bet him is because I don't know if you talk to fighters and you don't know if some of their confidence, because I've been around fighters now for almost 20 years, so you don't know if some of this confidence is like built up in themselves to believe in themselves, or whether they're truly like supremely confident. Like he was always a supremely confident guy. And I remember at the press conference, the 2 fighters face off.
Yeah.
And then he comes off and he turns to me and goes, "I already won."
I've heard that before. My coach has talked to me about that before too. A lot of times you can see in the stare down, they look for a little tell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I go like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I saw it in his eyes. I already won.
Yeah.
He's not ready.
He's made in hell.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's made in hell, and I'm a degenerate gambler. So at that point, so like I basically, I basically
always vote on.
I basically said I just got some inside information.
Yeah.
Like my guy just said he already won, so that's it. So well, no, I believed in him, so I bet on him.
That confidence,
which was really, really cool. And it was the same weekend where there was a big fight back then. It was Bernard Hopkins fighting Jermaine Taylor in their first fight.
That's that same card.
It wasn't the same card. It was a big pay-per-view that Saturday on HBO. And so a lot of times what happens in Vegas, at least what happened back in the day when, I don't know, boxing was I think more cool, was that and I think they still do it, especially if they have a TV deal. But there'll be a big fight on a Saturday, and there'll be like a appetizer type fight on a Thursday night. So this was like the main event of the appetizer, which was also on HBO, because they're trying to build up for the main pay-per-view a couple days later, and so they've got people watching, other boxing and kind of beating home the fact of, okay, and if you like this, order 2 days later. So and then I His promoter was Don King, but by that point we're friendly because we have mutual interests. And I remember I bought him like two courtside. Sorry, I'm a big basketball fan. You mentioned the Steve Nash, but two ringside tickets to the fight because I'm like, hey, he's a world champion now. Winky Wright was the other champion at the time. And then I called Don King. I'm like, hey, can you get us tickets to the fight? And Don King's like, fuck no, because Don King and Bernard Hopkins used to be in a lawsuit, like a big lawsuit. A lot of people don't know their big, their boxing history and stuff like that. So King's like, nah, I got nothing to do.
Little faux pas there.
Yeah. So King's like, I got nothing to do with that motherfucker. Fuck him. And so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to a scalper and buying my guy 2 tickets. But I just won a bunch of money on him. So I did that. So that was So that was how I started in boxing, and then just kind of snowballed from there. I got known as this Russian-speaking American attorney. So
what kind of attorney were you originally before you got into sports?
Originally, and still to this day, personal injury. So my fantasy football team name has been the Ambulance Chasers for 20 years. So I don't take myself too seriously, but I'm very serious when it comes to helping clients out that get hurt.
Yeah. Are you still practicing?
I am still practicing, but you would have to find me on the right day when I'm practicing or when I'm working on UNF stuff and stuff like that. Right. I dress differently and operate differently. But yes,
Better Call Saul action.
Yeah. I still have
nice
my
suit.
office.
Right.
Well, not as many suits anymore, just because since COVID and stuff, like court appearances are on Zoom. And,
Yeah. I work in legal recruiting, and it's all Zoom. Everything.
Yeah.
Almost no one's in the office.
So the
anymore.
Zoom appearances are like. Most attorneys don't even come on camera anymore, but usually I'll have a sports coat and a shirt on, but I might have boxers underneath. You can't tell.
Pants optional.
Yeah, so litigation has changed a lot. But yeah, I still practice.
Are you litigating in court, or are you usually trying to settle? What's your
the majority of cases settle.
Mm-hmm.
There are litigation cases. Even those cases settle, but there's some discovery involved with depositions and written discovery and stuff like that. And sometimes it comes down to the wire. So I haven't been in a trial for several years. I had a partner who unfortunately passed away who did our litigation. So, but if a case needs to be litigated, we'll litigate
get in there.
it. Yeah, and then we associate with other attorneys on bigger cases and things like that. So, that's what
originally paid the bills,
pays the
personal
bills.
Injury, and then you move into boxing, and then how much of the boxing promotion after you're working with Roman, right?
Yes.
Did you get some more clients from this? How did that? Tell me about how that snowballed.
Some of it is confidential, but I've represented plenty of boxers, MMA fighters, referees, judges, like in boxing.
Here's something to ask.
I've represented a lot of other guys. Yeah.
A lot of people maybe don't understand this. What does that mean when you represent a fighter? When you go to negotiate their contract, or what are the details of the duties that would fall to you?
Well, that's kind of what I do a lot behind the scenes. So, to this day, I represent a lot of mostly professional boxers, some MMA fighters in their contract negotiations. So, for example, just recently, there's a boxer who's 28-0. He's ranked #1 in the world. His name is Arnold Barbosa. At 140 pounds.
Yeah.
And I've known Barbosa because he used to fight on some of my club shows, and then he fought with Top Rank. So his contract with Top Rank had expired. So I just recently negotiated his new promotional deal with Golden Boy Promotions.
Okay.
So he's actually going to make his first fight for Golden Boy. He was going to fight actually tomorrow on the Ryan Garcia fight, but he had a bit of a flu, and so he's going to fight January 6th on the undercard of Virgil Ortiz.
Okay.
But part of the reason why he chose to sign with Golden Boy is because Ryan Garcia is now at 140 pounds. And he's going to try to get that fight.
He wants that fight,
or some sort of title fight, like Haney and Prograis are fighting in San Francisco next weekend.
Right?
So
you're going to come up? Can you get me tickets? Actually, is what I mean.
So yeah. Well, let's see. That's a Matchroom show. So Golden Boy or Top Rank, usually I can get any ticket. So,
okay.
Other folks,
guys, write that
other
down.
folks, we have to be
Golden Boy shows.
Yeah, we got to be closer friends, I think, to really call in favors on certain promoters. But it depends. It depends. What kind of work we've done in the past. So for 10 years, I was Paulie Malinagi's attorney.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a 2-time world champion.
Yeah.
And he was a Golden Boy fighter, but we pissed Golden Boy off and we were negotiating contracts. So for a while, Golden Boy wasn't very friendly with me because, they know that I'm, very, much a friend and an advocate for my clients. But, now we're cool. And, we just had a, very amicable negotiation. There was another fighter that just signed with them about a year ago that I negotiated his contract. So I do that behind the scenes. I don't advertise it too much or anything else like that.
It's word of mouth. How do people find you?
It's usually word of mouth, because I don't I just don't have a banner or I don't reach out to fighters or anything else like that. So I'll typically get a phone call. I've done a lot of arbitrations and a lot of dispute resolution in California when like managers and fighters get into a dispute or promoters and a fighter.
Arbitration being avoiding court.
Right. Arbitration being avoiding court, but mainly because of the commission in California. Because if there's a dispute between a manager and a fighter, or a promoter and a fighter, and the California fighters, then it's mandatory that you have to go through arbitration
first.
Yeah. So, for example, I represented Ronda Rousey in her arbitration with the commission when she was having a dispute with her manager at the time.
Okay.
So that you can Google that decision. It was a pretty landmark decision for the commission. And so I've represented a lot of, mostly fighters, but I represented managers from time to time as well. But I just kind of, I know the commission, I know that system, and so, again, they just find me, so I'll get a call, and if they're normal people, then I'll usually represent them. But it started, this whole questions and answer started with, I've actually represented, boxers or MMA fighters or even, other folks that have been in car accidents, and have heard also that I do personal injury. So I'm going to keep some of that confidential because, you never know. They might be like claiming neck and back injuries and they're fighting 3 weeks later. So I don't want the insurance company.
Has that ever happened? Somebody, they come out of a cage fight and they're like, I want to sue you for pain and suffering.
No. I can't sue people for hurt feelings or being upset
failing to put the ice on their neck.
Yeah. Right. Well, that was a little negligence, but luckily it worked out. So it just kind of snowballed from there. So he becomes world champion. There was another Russian fighter in Russia. He's like, hey, there's another guy out there. If you bring him out to the United States, I think he can become a world champion. And he did. And then so literally the first 3 fighters I ever represented in boxing became world champions. Two male fighters, 1 female fighter. And then I get a call randomly one day from another promoter that said, hey, I know you do, because I was doing a lot of their visas and everything else to get him into the country because they were coming in from Russia. So I got a call and they're like, I know you do boxers, but would you, be open to representing an MMA fighter because he needs to come in and he's, a pretty well-known fighter. I'm like, well, who's the fighter? And they're like, Fedor Emelianenko.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay, don't twist my wrist. Like, yeah, I'll represent him. So for all those fights with like Affliction and Strikeforce and stuff like that, I was Fedor's attorney. Then eventually I became M1 Global's attorney. So I was doing a lot of their work and stuff like that.
Wow.
So
what was it like working with Fedor?
It was wonderful.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite all-time fighter.
Yeah.
There's this moment when I think it was Fedor's last fight, when he's always got that cold-blooded killer look in his eye, and very just a psychopath as he's walking in, and in the ring, of course, just an absolute killer. And then it's his final fight, and his wife comes in with his young daughter, and all of a sudden this melts away, and he becomes the most tender, gentle father with his kid, and that was the only time I've ever seen any other emotion out of him. He had this very loving side that I really saw.
He really does. I have some amazing memories, like you mentioned. You mentioned him and his child. I've got this picture of. It was right outside of my house, but when he met my 6-month-old, who's now 15.
Yeah.
But it's this picture, and when you hang out with him, he's actually one big kid. I haven't talked to him in several years, but he was just always him and his childhood friends. He was a very loyal guy. They were just.
I got that sense.
Yeah, they were just big kids. The amount of practical jokes, little dick flicking things and stuff like that. I remember we were on a bus. We were driving from St. Louis to Kansas City. I think M1 Global was doing a show in Kansas City, and I think Strikeforce was doing something in St. Louis. And we're on this bus, and Gegard Musashi, who was an M1 Global fighter at the time, is in the row in front of him. And Gegard was pretty young then. He was just kind of starting out his career. And Gegard dozes off, and Fedor grabs the seat, and this is Fedor, big ass Fedor, and he shakes it. And Gegard wakes up, and then he whispers in his ear, "Turbulence." And we're on a bus. And he actually said turbulence in English. I don't know what it means. I actually don't know what it is in Russian.
I'm imagining Gegard gets up what the fuck? And then he sees his Fedor.
Yes, sir. So he was just, he was a big joker, but just a very generous, good guy. He was a very religious guy, still is.
Yeah.
And I think, that faith and just living life, differently, I think, was a positive contribution to the other side of his being, which is, this cold-blooded killer type. But he was an athlete. Like for him, it was always sport, and of course I grew up watching him in Pride and seeing all those amazing fights. And
when Kevin Randleman dropped him on his neck and he comes back and wins, that's legendary. The guy is incredible. So you have no contact with Fedor these days?
We haven't been in
contact. Drop him a line?
No, I have his email and
for the holidays or something,
No, and that's probably on me because I'm just not the best in keeping in touch with old friends and stuff like that. But I was also very, we were all very we all very much cared for him at the time, so you always wanted to look out for his best interest, but at the same time it was always work as well. It's probably just, I'm sure if I contacted him, he'd be like, hey, how's it going, how are the kids and stuff like that. But just everyone's busy with their own things and you just kind of do it. But that's just kind of like a history of how it kind of rolled into
the MMA world, right?
It rolled into not only the MMA world.
His first client was Fedor. What do you?
Well, that's the thing. It's like I remember this old school matchmaker used to be a publicist for Don King, Bobby Goodman. I don't know if he's still living. I hope he is. He was pretty much pretty old at the time, but I remember when when the first guy won the world champion, he told he came up to me, he's like, kid, most people are in this business for 30 years and don't have a champion. Like you're lucky. But I always embrace that, where I'm kind of like, right place, right time. But if you do good work, I met Paulie, randomly in New York when I was doing a show. So I started promoting shows basically after a certain period of time, and we became friends. And then when he needed an attorney, he's like a little brother to me, to this day. So it's just right place, right time, and obviously I really believe not only for like what we do with UpNext, but just kind of how I've always taken an approach towards business or relationships or anything else. Like your reputation is first and foremost. So I've always said that you don't have to necessarily work with me or anything else like that, but just ask around and hopefully you're asking the right people.
You're doing right by everybody, all your clients. There's no bad blood out there per se.
No, there isn't.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I gave
unlike guys like Don King or something, where
King's an interesting, individual to work with. I had other business with him because I represented other fighters that were fighting for world titles and so forth. And you can't really do good business with him until like you get into a huge F-bomb argument with him. And I think it's
that's like the barrier for entry.
I think it's his way of testing whether or not someone's a pushover.
Interesting.
Or someone isn't. And I've always said that his handshake is gold. Like if he says he's, at least from my experience, if he said he was going to do something, and he's still doing a couple fights here and there, I always say Bob Arum and Don King are going to outlive all of us. But in my dealings with him, if he said he was going to do something, he did it. He just didn't really care about a contract or anything else like that. He had his attorneys, and he did what benefited him. But he benefited a lot of fighters as well. But obviously, you can say the same thing about politicians or other people in every field. But he did business a certain way. But from my experience, it was interesting. But it was an interesting indoctrination with that, because when I was starting doing other shows and dealing with other fighters, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. You want, $40 a day for per diem or an extra hotel room or something like that, but you haven't really made it yet. Like I've seen what, how other people, react towards, fame and success and things like that. So you just realize who the good ones and the bad ones are.
Have you had fighters come to you want representation that you just turn them away for whatever reason? Maybe they might be great fighters, but you don't feel like they have charisma. Is there anything? What's the barrier for entry to working with you?
Well, what I do now is different in the sense of, I promote and, I've really gotten into the production side of things, because I just feel like, after seeing so many different shows by so many different promoters, so many different upstart companies, that, there's a graveyard of, promotions that just, we're doing it the wrong way and stuff like that. I think dealing with, the right people is important. I'm sure there were, certain people, I usually have an upfront conversation where, maybe we're not the right fit, so right. I try to be as open and honest about, number one, if they've got a good case or if they've got a good situation or anything else like that. And also like what can realistically be done and what can't be done. I mean, there's been plenty of fighters that, I've said, well, I want to get a certain amount of money, or I want to get a certain amount of, benefits from, a particular deal. And, you got to be realistic with them, where it's like, okay, but, it's your promoter that, can either afford to pay a certain amount or not. And their economics are usually based on what kind of money they're getting from television, and other,
and what they think they could get by promoting this fighter, by
correct.
adding, right?
Yeah.
So
so they have to be realistic about certain things. But there's been more times than not that I'm the one that actually says, well, this is a problem in your contract, so I would not agree to this. But the fighter's like, I don't care. I need to get it done and stuff like that. And I'll respect that and say, okay, but at least up front, I've told you, here's where the potential, obstacles and pitfalls are, along your career. Because a lot of these contracts, they're long term. It's like a marriage. And actually, I've used this line before with like a prospective client. I tell them, like, understand that if you sign this with a manager or promoter, it's like a marriage. And the problem is that divorce is very expensive. And when you come to me trying to, institute that divorce, it's going to be very costly. Not only financially, but potentially professionally, because you might be on the shelf for a while,
right?
Until a lot of these things get resolved and stuff like that. So, every situation's different. That is part of what I do. The enjoyment part is doing these shows. I must have been like a wedding planner or something in a previous life. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're really good with AV production and stuff too. I can see when I come to these UNF events, not only are you, organizing all this production and the lights and everything, but you're setting up the chairs. You guys are doing everything.
Yeah.
Like literally every single aspect. You and the Buckners are.
Yeah, it's not what I signed up for. They're not even listening to me anymore. They're like in their own phones.
Yeah. They have a new TikTok page.
I think they're like texting each other like, yeah, I knew this would happen. We would just get bashed in the chair and you just fucking talk the whole time. Yeah, like,
let's talk about that. How now, we've gone through the evolution. We've learned about young Bash, a young Ukrainian boy with a gleam in his eye. And then he comes over to the United States. The next thing you know, he's representing Fedor. Yeah. Taking over, working with Don King. And how did you meet the Buckners? And explain to me a little bit about the genesis of UpNext.
So, you mentioned something as far as, everything that I do or everything that we do for these shows. Now Chris is getting closer because I'm going to talk about him. He wants to hear what I'm saying. Is that, yeah. So, none of this would be possible, and whatever you guys are witnessing, nobody does it this way. Like, I've been around so many different, promotions and companies. I've helped other promotions kind of launch. Like when Combate Americas first started, I did a couple shows for them in LA. There's a lot of other promotions where they're like, okay, I used to do a lot of the local shows here in LA for Top Rank. So if they were, coming in with a show, and then I'd be their site coordinator because they just knew I could organize things for them and they didn't have to have any headaches and things like that. But none of that would be possible unless we were all more or less the same. Like, we were all kind of cut from the same thread, in the sense of, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter whether we're putting chair labels on, or whether we're dealing with fighters, or whether we're all a team, and nobody has any egos as far as that goes. So that's very rare.
Yeah.
So to answer your question,
it is very rare.
Yeah, it's super rare, especially in the boxing or MMA business, because a lot of folks are there for themselves,
glory, yeah,
right. And we're not. I'm still uncomfortable sitting here talking to you about it, just because I don't like to.
You could have fooled me, Steve.
I'm not. I didn't say I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
But I actually usually go away from it.
Yeah.
But just because
you're behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's not necessarily me, and I actually love, every time I see Ryan doing something on camera or anything else like that, like I have this, like warm feeling inside of like, yes, like I'm helping create that type of thing. So I just like
you're a producer.
A little bit. I didn't necessarily sign up for it originally, but I don't necessarily hate it either.
We're similar.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up to be sitting in this chair either, because when these guys started doing their podcast, I'm just connected in the MMA world of the Bay Area, so I started bringing in guests, and then I end up talking. Now here we are sitting in end of the year show talking with.
But
the whole team.
Yeah, but I think that's a good way of doing it, because you just kind of go where that business takes you and that career takes you.
What is it? Sun Tzu: as opportunities are seized, they multiply.
Yeah,
it's 100% true.
Yeah, you have to have that faith and that things will work out. Yeah, I was in the Bay Area for a cool fight. I represented a fighter, Selvin Barrero fought Andre Ward so this was probably like, I don't know, it feels like 8 to 10 years ago. I mean, this is, Andre Ward at his height. Yeah. I think it was before maybe the Kovalev fight. I think pretty sure it was the Kovalev fight because it was on HBO. But my favorite memory of that is because that's the thing. I don't like to be in front of the cameras, and I don't usually, like everyone in boxing is like, hey man, can we take a picture? And they do the, wait, hold on. Your fist, yeah. So I don't actually like taking pictures, which kind of sucks because people are like, yeah, right, you met, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, all those guys. I'm like, yeah, I do, but I don't have like the pictures in the phone and stuff like that. But I mean, listen, I met Muhammad Ali. I do have a picture of me and him. Joe Frazier before they passed, and like actually when they started passing away, I was like, fuck, like
why didn't
they're getting older. Like I really should document my experiences with that.
Well, that's some humility.
Yeah, yeah. But I bring that up because that fight was interesting because I'm representing the challenger for Andre Ward. Andre Ward was Andre Ward beat my guy, who put up a pretty good fight, but beat him, lost, but. I'm in the corral, right? So I've got, my suit on, I've got the credential and everything else. And in the front row, because this was at the old Oakland arena where the Warriors played.
Right.
Yeah, before they built the new arena.
Correct.
And Steph Curry is sitting in the front. And this is like young Steph Curry. I wish I had the picture to show you, but I'm texting with my kids, and my kids are huge basketball fans. We're big Clipper fans. There's only, I know there's 2 teams in LA, but let's not talk about that right now. I'm texting my kids and my wife. I'm like, yeah, like Steph Curry's right here and Draymond Green's right here and stuff like that. And like my wife's like, take a picture. So I went up to Steph, and I kind of looked official, right? So, and this was like, I think they had already won maybe 1 championship, maybe 2. But like Steph looks young now, but he looked young then because I always look back on the picture. But I literally come up, I'm like, you may not believe this, but I don't do selfies. I don't do selfies, but my kids are literally blowing up my phone. Can I get a selfie? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we took a selfie. So I remember that trip.
But for someone else, you did it.
I did it for the kids. Yeah, I did it for the kids.
Again, it's not like so you can go post it on TikTok.
Yes, yes. But that's the beauty of like I've been boxing has brought me all around the world. I've been to fights in Australia, Macau, Germany, Russia, Ukraine. And then every random city in the United States. So that's been a really cool experience.
Yeah. How do you originally meet the Buckners?
So the Buckners actually had a relative, a son that fought for another promotion that I was involved with back in the day, and when you're representing or when you're behind a fighter as a promoter. You interact with, the people that are behind that fighter a lot of times. And so, I got a chance to interact with them because there was this fighter that was on the card and he fought on multiple shows and we're dealing with tickets and just making sure that the relationship, at least on that, here tomorrow night, there's 15 fights, right? So if there's 15 fights, like right now, UNF, the Buckners are dealing with, 30 different personalities.
And their teams and coaches and camps.
Exactly. And some are better to deal with. Some are worse, but you get to understand that the ones that are good human beings and good to deal with, you not only want to deal with them again, but you also want to get to know them a little bit better. And at the end of the day, like this is a lot of work for not that much revenue or fame or anything else like that. So it's got to be a labor of love.
Yeah.
And so
boy, do I know about that.
Yes. And listen, you only live life once, and so if you got to at least live with your passions and what you believe with, right. That's good. So,
well, you guys are only, is it 18 months now since promotion's been around?
Yeah. So, if you would have told me 18 months ago that, we would have done so many shows and, been at it so regularly at the high level that we have been, I probably would have said no, because I don't have the energy for it and I don't think it could happen. But I think the combination of having the Buckners involved and having George Bastarmagian, who him and I go way back to other shows and everything else, like he's also co-managed boxers with me in the past. I think he posted the other day on Instagram, which made me like think back. Like we were in St. Louis for a world title fight. Don King's right there. George is in the background. I was like, man, I haven't seen that picture in so many years. Like we go way back, and so. When you get those folks that kind of have the same vision and just the same attitude towards life and business and everything else, that's when magic can happen. So
that's right.
Our relationship, kind of, progressed to the point of, I think it was Chris eventually came and said, look, my kids are getting older. This is something they have a huge passion for. George, you and George, clearly know what you're doing, and we like working with you and stuff like that. Let's see if we can work on something together. And I don't know if my history of how it all started is accurate, but in my mind, I think the conversation was kind of like, all right, well, what do we call it? And I don't know. Here we are talking about what's up next. Let's just fucking call it Up Next. And I think it was something like that. but I might be paraphrasing, but it's the kids are up next. Ryan's up next. He's the up and comer. These fighters are up next. At the end of the day, that's kind of what we do. I always said for my boxing shows or MMA shows that I did in the past, a lot of the fighters that you see right now that are the marquee guys, I've got their baby pictures. Ryan Garcia, who fights tomorrow night, his very first 2 fights in California were on my show.
This all makes a lot of sense that you're in an organization now called Up Next.
Yeah, and I'm cool with it. I enjoy not being at this level. I don't mean at this level below the UFC or anything else like that, but being at this level where you're discovering the next generation of fighters. There's a reason why we call it the future of the fight game, because these guys are the future. The only difference right now with what we're doing with Up Next, as opposed to maybe the way I used to do it in the past, is we're providing not only the future, but we're also giving them the future. So a lot of the guys that you see fighting, as a rising star, they'll become pros, and as far as we can take them, that's great. If the UFC comes calling, we'll throw them a party. We have no problem with that.
Let's talk about that, the level that Up Next is at now and where you're looking to go with this. Where do you see Up Next going if we're sitting down December of next year? This was a colossal year for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's
14. How many shows this year? 10?
I don't even know. I don't even want to know. Don't even give me the number.
Right. It's
crazy. If you bring up December next, you guys don't understand. Every show is my retirement show. This is it. I'm out tomorrow.
Not getting paid enough to do this.
I love, the Buckners, but, they're already scheduling, lunch meetings on Monday to talk about, the next 3 shows in 2024. This is it's fucked up.
Well, you guys got so much momentum. There's so much hype around this. I talked to my friends in LA, and they all know of the promotion.
Yeah. It's
growing so fast. And, you got 2 guys, I think, now have gone on to the UFC, right?
We got a couple guys going on to UFC. I think there's a couple guys literally on the verge, including 2 guys that are fighting tomorrow night. I mean, that main event with Gianni Vasquez and Michael Reyes.
Right.
I'm surprised Vasquez is back. I thought he was going to get signed by the UFC even after his last fight. So, we pride ourselves not only in that, but also like you mentioned, so many shows and everybody in LA talking about it.
Because you're giving the amateur guys this pro experience as well. Where else are you going to get a weigh-in show and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So here's the thing. My whole thing is and I have partners that are of the same ilk and of the same mentality, is if you're going to do it, do it well,
do it right, commit.
We talk about these things where it's kind of why are we doing this? Why did we just plan a weigh-in show and everything else when we're not necessarily at that level or anything else like that? And the answer is because we can. And because it's just
going great,
and that's the way we do it. No offense to anyone else that does it, but a lot of people are faking it. And I wouldn't be like you talk about next year, unless we can do it at this level and provide what we feel is the best thing we can provide, I would just wouldn't do it. So I'm sure 2024 is going to be great. Tomorrow night is a crazy show. It's literally, where'd Ryan go? Ryan was our matchmaker,
he put together 18 fights.
Yeah, he was like Oprah Winfrey. It was the end of the year, and it's every fighter was man, can I fight one more time before the end of the year? And Ryan's yeah, you get a fight, and you get a fight, and you get a fight. Everybody gets a fight. And now we've got we'll be out of here in 12:30 in the morning.
It's going to be a long one.
So, yeah. But but it's kind of cool because it's kind of also when you look at some of the fighters that are on the card, it's kind of they fought for us multiple times already in the last year and a half. They obviously want to come back, and obviously we want to have them back because it's kind of an end of the year thank you as well. It's if you want to get one, Danny Labastida, fought in our last show.
That's right, like a month ago.
Just in October.
Right.
It was a crazy fight. He fought a guy that, is like a killer in Alvarado.
He grew up on the mat. Yeah, Alvarado's dad had been training him since he was in diapers to choke people to death. You know, and Danny stepped in and
and now he stepped in again on December 2nd. And I'm like, when I saw his name, I'm like, come on, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
But when a guy like that wants to keep fighting, then it's like, we're in some ways with a lot of fighters, we're a match made in heaven. With some fighters that, like literally I've called them and said, I don't think I'm ready for UpNext yet. I want to fight on some smaller shows.
So it's a little daunting.
Then we're not a good match.
Because when they come here, they're under the big lights, for real. It feels like that, right?
Yes. And it's our job not only to make them feel like they're under the big lights, but, to give them as much exposure as possible. Because at the end of the day, if they can't handle it, then they're not going to go up to the next level.
Or when they get there, they don't make the most of it. It's like a fish out of water, right?
Yes, and we've seen some of those situations. So there is a cutthroat nature to it. But that's what shapes them. I mean, they'll be much better professionals down the road if they want to take their career, for years on end. Like even who was it, Kester Abad, who, we're bringing in.
Kester,
we're bringing in because he looked like a killer in his last fight. So we're bringing in a guy from out of state who's one of the best fighters out there in Virginia.
That's one of the best matchups, I think. Kudos Ryan on that one.
Yeah.
Two amateurs with first round knockouts, real tall, lanky flyweights. It's a wild matchup.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pretty crazy matchups. You never know how the fights are gonna shake out, but just on paper alone, it's a pretty wild show.
So for tomorrow's card, who are some of the matchups that you're most excited about?
I mean, there's a lot of them. Obviously the bad blood matchups are usually the ones that
we like these.
Yeah, you just get kind
London
of like
D. Simone or something.
You get kind of pumped up because like there's so much shit talking going into the fight.
Oh, Ingram Dodorian.
So Ingram Dodorian, like that, I didn't realize coming into the weigh-in that there was bad blood because I don't pay attention to all of it, but then I realized, oh wait a minute, that's the same camp that Ingram won at the Club UNF show, and there was a close decision.
It was Hamlet, right?
Right. So I'm like, okay, I can see that. And then you're at the weigh-in, and then you hear one guy calling the other guy college boy, and then I got to look him up. I'm like, oh wait, he goes to UCLA, so I kind of like him now because I went to UCLA. And then there's actually physical stuff that goes on. So that one turned into like really bad blood, real quick. Yeah. And they don't even have enough time to kind of like settle down. So they're going to come in tomorrow, with the same adrenaline that they came in, today. So I am definitely looking forward to that fight. They both come from, and that's another,
two great camps.
So we don't like, we pretend that we don't know what we're doing sometimes, but we kind of do. And so, one of the, big business models or big focuses, for UpNext, for Ryan, for George is, there's different types of gyms and there's different types of trainers. And so we've done, some spotlights in some of the gyms where some of our fighters come from. But at the end of the day, there's some factories that are producing, the next great fighters, like even up north, you've got AKA and a couple of those, those huge
the Resistance,
huge gyms. So out here,
fighters.
Out here with CMMA and Colin Oyama's gym, and these two fighters, they come from Antonio McKee's gym and Dave Roberts' gym. So, like we know that you're going to see them for 15 minutes, whatever it is, but they've been training for 15 months. Every single day,
with, dance under the lights for a little while.
Right. So we know that there's these factories where they're breeding the best future MMA fighters that California has to offer, and so. That's part of why I think a lot of these matches are really so good because it's kind of like like a Division I college powerhouse, right? And if that there's a quarterback coming in from a particular school, he might be the second stringer, but he's going to be better than some Division III or Division II gym or something like that they're dealing with. So that's what makes the show even more special.
ask a follow-up question about that. I was chatting with Sean Loeffler from the Compound at SF Combat in November.
Yep. He's had a lot of fighters on our shows.
Yeah. Great guy. I mean, we really got on great. And he was, we were talking about UNF, and you guys are not on Fight Pass, right?
We are not.
And has Fight Pass approached you about this yet?
So I think that, there's been some just loose conversations, but we don't know if that's something that is going to be part of our future or not. There's some, pluses and minuses towards that. There's some pros and cons.
Yeah, because like they would have control of matchmaking or some say in the production, right? But
I mean, I'm not worried too much about the production because I've seen, some of the shows that are on Fight Pass, and they're as equal or not to ours, plus
big budget.
And a lot of the production folks that we use are actually similar to the folks that LFA uses and stuff like that. So
same teams, you mean?
A lot of them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we know, like I've been around, some big fights, and I know, what kind of production. It's all dollars, so if you have a certain budget, you can do absolutely everything. We make, very quality production with, like a certain budget, friendly type of thing.
Yeah,
so
it looks it.
Yeah.
But so if you guys are not currently on Fight Pass, and I know UFC would go, like they go to A1 or they go to any of these other promotions, and UFC is pulling from those promotions to give those guys the call. Do you think, and this is what I was talking with Sean Loeffler about a little bit, like, do you think fighters might be reticent to jump in with UpNext because it's like, oh, maybe UFC is going to blacklist these guys and we'll never get that call?
Yeah, I don't think it's a blacklist situation because there's no beef there. It's not like we're sending a pipeline to PFL or whatever else that. So I don't think there's that. I do think as part of the balance between pros and cons, I do think that a lot of fighters do choose to go on LFA, possibly A1. I'm not sure. I know A1's done a show here at Carmez that wasn't very successful. I don't think they plan on coming back to LA, but I know their Northern California shows,
they got one this weekend.
Yeah, they do pretty well, and a lot of fighters are from Uriah's gym or that area.
But they're so connected with Fight Pass,
they are, and so I don't know the future, but I do think that one of the pros of getting on Fight Pass is I think in some fighters' mentalities or managers that represent those fighters, they think, well, if I'm seen on UFC Fight Pass, then I'm seen by the UFC, and the UFC might discover me and things like that. But we have a long, like George and I, even with promotions that we've ran ourselves. Victor Henry fought for us.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of some of the Armenian fighters that are now in the UFC and stuff like that. So we've always, if the fighter's good enough, he's going to be signed by at the time.
So you don't think that's.
I don't think it's a big. I think there's some fighters that might think that, and so might choose that, but I don't think it's a big factor. I don't.
Would you entertain being on Fight Pass at some point?
I think we would. Yeah, I think we would. I think if it made economic sense, and I think it depends on the length of the deal, the exclusivity. My understanding is Fight Pass owns all of your content. And if you've noticed, we're really big into producing as much content as possible, and also just trying to get it out there to as many people as possible. So we'll make certain deals. Like you can watch, UNF shows all over the country in 40 million homes. If you're on Fight Pass, the Fight Pass universe, whatever their subscriber base is, let's say it's 800,000, 1 million people, whatever, are subscribing. That's it. And who knows how many people are actually watching a particular A1 show, or a particular LFA show.
Some amateur card.
I think
it might actually be a fewer number.
It may be less exposure. So right now we're trying to get as many eyeballs on the product as possible. And we think Fight Pass would have to probably give us something serious to think about, but we do think that what we're growing might be something that a bigger platform
eventually could
pick up.
This or
so if you know the story of Bellator and how they started and where they went,
a bit, and where they are now with PFL, right? Incredible.
Right. So Bellator was on MTV3, and I think Bjorn Rebney was buying time at the time, and UFC had left Spike TV. Spike TV at the time, that channel doesn't exist, but that was Paramount, and it was basically a channel that was built on the first Ultimate Fighter, with Forrest Griffin and Bonner and that kind of stuff. And once
that was what kind of started making the UFC profitable, right?
Yes. But when they left Spike, I think they went to Fox at the time and then eventually to ESPN, Spike was left without a brand, and so they bought Bellator.
Right.
And then Scott Coker got involved and kind of reconfigured how they did things. But, that opportunity might be there where, there's a particular network or something like that that really wants an MMA product.
Right.
And so we're building something, hopefully, that, could be turnkey and ready to go. And maybe that might be more economically feasible, but if not, then maybe Fight Pass is the answer. But I don't think we.
Sounds like you're open to whatever, and
we're
just
absolutely
keep doing what you're doing, staying in your lane,
Yeah.
doing one thing very well, making UpNext as good as it can possibly be, and then the opportunities.
I think so.
Appear.
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's not really this way, but I like to think that every show we do is a really good dress rehearsal or a really good proof of concept for something much bigger.
Yeah.
And so when that bigger opportunity comes along, we're not going to fail because we've already been doing it. We already know how to do it.
Be ready.
And, the crazy thing is if, you give us some money, then we could do it even better.
Well, you guys have some really unique shows as well. This next one in January that I heard about, the UNF Gallery,
Yes,
calling it?
yes, UNF Gallery.
This is
the
what's
Art of
interesting.
Violence.
The Art of Violence. You got some really cool ideas for shows. When Chris had presented it to me, why don't you explain the concept behind it?
Yeah, before I explain that particular concept, I think it's just it's a general way of thinking and the way of doing things where because we do have our autonomy and we do have our flexibility to do things, come up with cool ideas and do things the way we did. We did Club UNF because we were in a nightclub. Right. And so if we're in a nightclub, then, let's not just pretend to just be doing the same thing. Let's make it, a nightclubby type show.
Right.
It'll be a different feel. It'll be a different look. It's something that people do anyways, which is go to a nightclub. But, you've seen the movie Fight Club and,
let's turn the nightclub into a fight club.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were at a venue that, that's done some pro wrestling. Josh Barnett has a wrestling company that did a couple shows there, and I know the venue fairly well because some years ago when Vasily Lomachenko was fighting here in L.A., I got hired by Top Rank to do some of the promotional, week of events. So he had his open media workout at the Ukrainian Cultural Center. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, we haven't announced anything yet, so I don't know when this is going to air, but we're going to announce soon. So if you guys want the scoop, you got the scoop. Yeah, you got the scoop. So I remember that venue, and I remembered it was just a really cool venue because, number one, like the acoustics in there, it gets crazy loud. Because I went to one of Josh Barnett's blood sports shows. And, there were probably like 6, and then GCW does wrestling out there and stuff like that. But it got so loud because it's just such a cool acoustic, just feel to the room. And we're kind of looking around, and, the walls, I remember, were kind of like, they're like, what are we going to do with these walls? Because, whenever I look at a room, look here, we're sitting here basically in a tent, right? I can't see what we look like right now, but, we try to make that tent look as pretty darn cool as possible. But we work with whatever we have. And so when we were in the venue, I'm kind of looking around, and I remember I saw like a painting on the wall, right? It was just random. It was like of a woman or something like that. And then I go to the guy that runs the venue. I'm like, would you allow us to put some more paintings up? And he's like, yeah. He's like, that's like foam board, whatever. You can like nail in where, and then there's nails everywhere, right? There's literally like 1,000 just nails of like stuff that they've like, put up over the years. And so I look at Chris and Ryan. I'm like, what if we turn this into like an art gallery?
So cool.
But like the pieces of art would be fighters.
Yeah, like fighter pop art.
Yeah. And by the way, I used to smoke weed, but I don't anymore. But I still, for some reason, I might have I don't know. I still come up with ideas. So, so I'm looking. I'm like, yeah. And then we were I think we were like on the fence of like, do you think we should do a show here? Because it may or may not meet the standards of what we want to do. But then we were like, no, but if we turned it into, something cool, like if you go to an art show, you might go to an art show like in a warehouse, and it just exposed brick and stuff like that. But if you light it well and you put it up well, it'll be fine. So that's kind of where it started. And I think that's when it's like, okay, we're in, let's do it. Like that's what we're going to do. So I don't want to give away with like you'll see, we're really big on our artwork and our flyers and just kind of giving a different feel, to everything. So everything, if we can, should have a theme. Like we even thought, okay, we're going to do a Christmas theme for the show. No, it's 3 weeks before Christmas. Let's just not, it's too early. We even did like a little Halloween, 10 days before Halloween. But for this particular show, January 27th, it's going to be kind of basically like when you walk in, you're going to walk into an art gallery of fighters. And so it still basically is consistent with what we've tried to do from day one, which is elevate the fighters to a higher level. And when they walk in and they see themselves basically transformed
on a canvas,
or whatever else it is, it's our way of showing them appreciation for what they do. Because at the end of the day, like if you're getting hit in the head for a living, like,
for us,
exactly. Right. Or for the fans or whatever else it is, like it's our job and our obligation to make sure that every single one of them knows how much we appreciate them. Mm-hmm. That's been the motto and MO from day one. And so January 27th is just basically a continuation of that. We are in a position where we can do that, right? So if we're in a position we can do that, we're going to embrace that, do it. And then, like there's other things that we've done. You see other people kind of copycatting and stuff like that. We feel that's like a compliment, to what we're doing. I think this is going to be hard to replicate, but I'm really looking forward to it. And we haven't even like scratched the surface yet as far as like, all of the things I think that we're going to implement for that show. But from at least the foundational point, it's kind of like, okay, we've got the foundation of something really cool. I think everyone's going to dig it.
I love that it's an homage to the fighters too. I mean, and you can tell we've interviewed a lot of your guys, a lot of the guys on your roster. They all love working, fighting for UpNext. They're so grateful. They have so much appreciation. The fact that you guys are so generous towards them and give them the best of everything, and you're so generous, and we're so appreciative of you too. You've opened all these great doors for our podcast. We were just getting started, when I reached out to you guys, and now this is the fourth time we've been working with you guys. It's like the appreciation is mutual, man. You guys are so great for the community and the fight scene. And, next year, I think you're just going to absolutely crush it. And we really want to stick with you and work together and help you rise.
Thank you.
Put the spotlight on this.
Well, we appreciate you guys, too. I mean, we'll tell you, we'll crack jokes with you guys and stuff like that. But we talk, amongst ourselves. And, we really respect and appreciate what you do, because you're not only also giving back to the fight community, but, we like... the fact that, you hustle just as much as us. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you drove here or got on a plane or whatever else it is, but, the fact that you do what you do and the fact that we're able to collab on that together, I think, we all I think the same way. And I'm glad that, we keep on doing it. You're always welcome to, come out. We should do more. I've told the guys, like, we gotta figure out how to get up north and do a show up there as well.
Hey, we'll get you in the Bay Area hopefully in 2024. There's some really incredible fighters up there, and that would be a really wild matchup.
It's on the list. I mean, I know it's on the list of. Like, I didn't even know until like recently that there's like northern. Yeah, we have a very long list, but somewhere on the list is this NorCal SoCal battle. Maybe we meet halfway, like in Fresno or something like that. Yeah. We've talked about that because at the end of the day, like we're very California centric, and we almost. I mean, look, if you're telling me that there's a huge fan base that just love great fights, up in the Bay Area. I feel like, they probably haven't seen anything yet until UNF can kind of, put their little stamp on how we do things.
Well, all right.
Yeah. Like I've seen some of the interviews. I think I saw Abel like cage side at like an SF combat show recently. And I remember I called Chris, and no offense, and I think the promoter was actually being interviewed with him. He seemed like a very nice guy, by the way. But I called Chris. I'm like, you see those lights? You see that? Like I started immediately saying like, here's how I would change things around or whatever else it is. But and that's not a knock on it. But we like to. With whatever resources we have, we like to definitely bring the greatest quality to it, and you guys are a testament to that, because I think in the realm of podcast, you guys are doing things that most people don't do, and you just got to keep growing, and hopefully we can all grow together.
Steve Bash, not Steve Nash.
Yes.
Steve Bash.
Do you regret now that you
That I messed
had
it.
me as had me as a guest? Because I don't know, what have we been here, an hour?
It just flew by, man.
Yeah.
Well, they did. Yeah, the Chris Buckner did warn.
Did he
me.
warn you? Yeah. Did he warn? Did you say like
He's been over here the whole time. Like, come on.
Yeah, they're like, do you know what you're getting into if you're gonna have Bash as a guest? So, yeah.
I got a lot out of this. This was awesome.
Yeah.
It was great learning about you and your history, you know, as a boxing promoter. And
Yeah, I don't tell most people that.
Yeah.
You asked, so I told you, and I feel that's how you know.
I'm really
that's how
grateful.
you know I like this podcast because I gave you the juice. Otherwise, I could have given you like a short. I can't give you a short answer. Actually, I don't think I'm capable of giving a short answer.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll give you.
Stop it.
Good.
Get some help.
I need help. I know I do. I know. This is why they stick me into like the production booth. Like, no. This show has evolved. Like, I used to be on the floor. You know, like
Folding chairs.
Like,
yeah.
well, like no. People like I'll invite some people. yeah. We have one thing. Chris Buckner does a lot, but he doesn't do chairs.
I've seen him do chairs, and he was holding the ring.
No. He controls the ring. Yeah. But they stuck me in like people will come and like I didn't see you at the show. I'm like, yeah, that's because we're live and I'm like directing and doing stuff.
The man's going to be down in the production.
I think
booth
they stuck me there so I just don't talk to people.
You're running the whole show behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Steve Bash, thank you so much,
Thank
brother.
you.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Friend of the Old New Money podcast, Steve
Yes.
Bash. UpNext Fighting 14 tomorrow night, and then we'll be talking to you again soon, and we'll see you in January again for the UNF.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like you guys got to like come and like with whatever art stuff you guys got. Like Abel's got to
wheels are
I need Abel to like channel like Basquiat or Van Gogh or something and come decked.
We will come prepared for sure.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate
All right.
it again.
My pleasure.